Welcome to today's episode of the podcast where we discuss a recent installment of a different series every show. Today is Monday, February 26th, and to celebrate National Pistachio Day, we are cracking into the pilot of Netflix's latest live-action adaptation, Avatar: The Last Airbender. You've been chomping at the bit to talk about this show for quite some time. Why is that?
Because Avatar: The Last Airbender is one of my favorite shows.
Top five? Top
yeah,
three?
Probably. I would put it at like number 2, probably.
Two?
Yeah,
okay.
because
and on IMDb it's like number, 9, 10?
I think number 12 has like a 9.3, I think. But it was back in July of 2008 when Nickelodeon kept on promoting the final 5 days of Avatar. They were going to show the final back half of season 3.
No spoilers, right? Because we're just talking about it, and it's going to follow at least Avatar enough, this show, that we don't want to be discussing too much more than maybe the titles.
I was just going to say that I was there when the world premiere of the mid-season premiere of season 3 happened.
What do you mean by you were there?
Because I watched it. Nickelodeon kept on having that timer down in the corner. Yes, and I watched it live, and I watched most of the episodes, and even on the day of the Avatar finale, that was the same day I saw The Dark Knight in theaters, and I came back and turned it on and realized, oh, this is like Sozin's Comet, the 4-part finale that
I think it's important to point out you were just a kid.
Yes.
Like what are you, 11 years old?
I think I was like 8.
Wait, 2008?
Yeah, 2008.
You would have been 10, right? Because you were born in 98.
Well, 9. I would have been 9.
Okay.
But anyways, 2 years later, my friend bought me to the movie because he was a huge Avatar fan. Probably number 1 on his list. And I ended up hating the movie. The movie was absolutely terrible. It's considered to be one of the worst films of all time. And I did not care because I hadn't seen Avatar: The Last Airbender aside from when Nickelodeon was showing the final 5 days of it. Mm-hmm. And then the nostalgia critic, 3 years later, comes out with his review for the movie. He has the same feelings I did about the movie.
Famous YouTuber for anybody.
Yes. But he also was like, this show was incredible. How did they mess it up so much? And I thought, you know what? Fine, I'll check out the show. And then I decided to binge watch the whole entire thing. There was 2 shows that I binge watched at the beginning of my freshman year of high school. Those 2 shows were Avatar: The Last Airbender and Sons of Anarchy. 2 entirely different shows. And I was thinking, well, maybe I could come up with a paragraph for how I felt about the film or the TV show. But then I realized, why do that when I have my Common Sense Media review page, where I used to use Common Sense Media like I do Letterboxd now, where I would actually keep reviews of different things. And I found my reviews for the Last Airbender film and TV series, and I was thinking I could read them right now.
Yeah.
This was around when I was close to 15. These actually sound like at best.
You have to give a qualifier.
Yes, this sounds at best like they were written by someone who was 10, so I tried to polish them up a little bit, but this is what I said about the film. And I titled it, The Last Airbender is my least favorite movie of all time, 1 out of 5 stars. Then I started my review. The Last Airbender is my least favorite movie of all time. Avatar: The Last Airbender show was terrific, but this movie is terrible. The acting is the worst I have ever seen. The script is horrible. I got a headache in the theater from how utterly confused the plot was. I would have walked out if my friend didn't take me to this. This is like a new low for cinema. I didn't know movies could get this low, but The Last Airbender made it happen. I give The Last Airbender 1 star because it taught us The Room wasn't the worst movie ever.
So you'd already seen The Room by then?
Yes. I think I saw The Room when I was like in 7th grade. And then scrolling through trying to find my TV series review, I came across my Bourne Legacy review, and I titled that The Bourne Legacy, my second least favorite movie of all time. Number 1 goes to The Last Airbender. So that gives you my feeling on the film.
Well, not only that, but like with the series itself, you made me watch that later on. And I'm less of a fan of it than you are.
Well, again, it's more nostalgia for me because I gave the series a 5 out of 5. And I said I never thought I would say a kid's show is one of my favorites. Yes, I'm almost 15, and I thought Avatar: The Last Airbender was amazing. Avatar is an incredible show, even though it has quite a lot of filler episodes, which mostly show up in the first season. However, most of the episodes are great. Overall, everyone should see it. I regret not watching it when I was a child because it would have been a great childhood memory.
I give it a lot of respect, even though I'm not the target, like the biggest fan of the series, like I said. So we're approaching this new adaptation from 2 different angles, but go on.
And I feel like there's 3 ways to look about it, because when you look at Netflix adaptations of anime or cartoons, I'm not really sure where Avatar falls in the whole mix, but it's like Death Note, 2017. That film was hated by fans and critics alike. Yes. Anyone who saw it, like I did, the whole series, they did not like that American film. But then Cowboy Bebop 2021, that tried and had some good parts, but the final result wasn't that great. But I was hoping that this series series was going to be a lot like the most recent adaptation, One Piece, where somehow Netflix was able to succeed in converting new fans and satisfying old ones at the same time. However, there was that huge article that kind of became viral that came out that said that Avatar: The Last Airbender was trying to get like Game of Thrones fans, I think.
Well, there's the elephant in the room because, yes, they did say that. They also found out that Michael Dante DiMartino and Brian Konietzko, the two original creators, dropped out. They were supposed to be the executive producers and showrunners when it was first announced in 2018. A couple years later, they fell away and they said Netflix wasn't following through with their promise to support their vision of the retelling. They brought in another showrunner who wants to be authentic and keep a lot of the show's elements, which I think we see here, but it wasn't the same story. It's the same storyline. It's just told a completely different way. Should we transition over into the Netflix series now and start talking about this pilot that we both watched over an hour long? The first episode is called Aang.
Yes.
Now, the way I've written it, normally we like to go, I guess, through the plot kind of slowly, or sometimes give a quick, 2-sentence
recap.
Yeah. Yes. I've written a full paragraph here because there's so much that goes down. It's 3 episodes worth of the animated series that they adapted. And so I'm just going to read this to kick us off so that people know who might not have watched the entire episode will know where we're coming from.
Yep.
In a world divided into 4 element-bending nations, an earthbender's attempt to warn his people of a Fire Nation attack ends with his execution by Fire Lord Sozin, who reveals the attack as a mere diversion. Meanwhile, 12-year-old Aang, residing in the Southern Air Temple, learns from his mentor and friend Monk Gyatso that he is the next Avatar, the only one capable of bending all 4 elements and tasked with keeping the peace between the 4 nations. Overwhelmed by this newfound responsibility, Aang leaves to clear his head, gets caught up in a storm and inadvertently encases himself in an iceberg with a sky bison / manatee, his sky bison.
I know you have the rest of the summary to go, but that scene I thought was epic. But keep going.
Where he first goes into his avatar state and you see it forming. You do get that in the flashback that he has in the original animation, but it's only glimpses of it, right? All right, so that's at the same time that the Fire Nation is having their onslaught and killing everybody at the Southern Air Temple. A century later, though, the Southern Water Tribe siblings Sokka and Katara discover Aang in his ice sculpture, setting off a chain of events that includes Aang's capture and subsequent escape from Prince Zuko of the Fire Nation, who seeks to end the Avatar's threat to his nation's dominance and restore his honor in his father's eyes. Now, he doesn't actually use the word honor in this show, which was the meme from the old one. I think they switch it out with destiny. But Aang then faces the harsh truth of his people's genocide at the Southern Air Temple, accepts his identity as the Avatar, and determines to end the Fire Nation's tyranny. And that's where we leave it for that episode, yes.
And I think it's fair to say that the episode starts off at episode 3, but I thought that it worked for the show because chronologically, episode 3 is kind of deals with flashbacks and shows Aang's backstory. But instead of doing that, they decided to start off that way, so you got a lot more of Monk Gyatso.
I think what they did was they took episode 3 and they sort of gutted it, and then they decided instead of showing through flashbacks, we were just going to straight up.
That's why I'm saying.
So your first take, though, of the entire episode, what did you get from that?
I think that this is a step above kind of the Cowboy Bebop thing. I think that there is a lot of kind of growing pains the show has to go through, but I'm glad to say that I think I was entertained the whole time. I was happy with this, I think, as an Avatar fan.
Okay, I wanted to give a public service announcement to Netflix directly. This is a kid's show. It's okay to build up tension over time. Mm-hmm. If you remember the original animated series, the first season, they say, is the slowest. Yep. They also say it's the worst, but it leads up until the 3rd season, which is like this epic, right? Yeah. But I think they heard the word epic and they were like, let's make an epic, you know? You don't need to begin with 20 minutes of action. You don't need to spell out to the audience who the bad guys are more than twice. You don't need to take yourself too seriously, removing 75% of the immaturity and the humor.
That was probably the biggest con I had.
This wasn't funny enough to me. I know you liked it, but to me, it just wasn't funny enough. And I think part of the reason was because of Zack Snyder. Zack Snyder removed it for DC. It worked there, and they thought maybe it'll work here. You don't need to give all the main characters and some side characters a soapbox to stand on.
I was going to wait till my cons.
And well, I'm kind of mixing them. So, but this is the end of my PSA is you don't need to dilute the main character's powers / confidence to make him more human. I do feel with Monkey Luffy, the guy from One Piece,
yes,
the show that I also enjoyed, I think I gave it an 8.5 out of 10, that they were able to retain his immaturity, his humor, and his just OPness. Like, he was overpowered. He never faced a challenge that he wasn't going to win, and he wasn't even scared about it. Avatar seemed a little scared every single battle that he got into. But what do you think if you had to call the two biggest points of contention for all those fans out there who watched the series who then came over and watched this one?
Like, what was their biggest problem with it?
Yes. Yeah.
I would say it's that it just didn't feel very necessary. For example, in 2005, when Avatar: The Last Airbender showed up, like, historical fiction has always been a thing. But ever since then, and this is just to name a few out of the dozens upon dozens of TV shows, possibly hundreds that have been made about this, you have things like Shadow and Bone, Merlin, the Shannara Chronicles, His Dark Materials, The Witcher, Game of Thrones, Legend of the Seeker. You have all these different TV shows, and it just seems like, especially after the movie, no one was really asking for Avatar: The Last Airbender TV show to be made. I think that I liked it a little more because, again, I saw the movie. That was my introduction to Book 1 of Water, and it was nice to at least hear the characters' names be right and the characters to be more like themselves. I think that Sokka could have been a bit funnier, but I was actually glad to see that they were taking some things and making them right from the series.
You thought Sokka was the problem with this show? That he wasn't funny enough?
I think that he was the most different from his
We are going to
character.
have two very different sets of pros and cons, I can already tell. I'm excited. My two biggest things that I think are going to be points of contention is, again, a kid's show that starts off with a genocide.
Yes.
It's dark. That's like Star Wars level Anakin stuff that like people have always made fun of. I understood the action to it and I liked the VFX, but it did take me when I was 20 minutes in being like, this is not the show I quite remember. Then it turned into kind of a direct replay of some of the show I remember. So I found that fine. The second point that I found kind of contentious was that they got rid of what seemed to be people's favorite moment from the first 2 episode premiere, which is when Aang gets knocked off that boat, falls in the water, and then goes full Avatar. It's the first time you see him waterbend. It's the first time that he really gets a chance to fight Zuko in his full state, and it's also the first time where Katara and Sokka get to see him using that ability. Instead, that thing goes to Katara. We'll get to that in a second. The third one, which is more of an honorable mention contention, is the Gran Gran character. They kind of changed her a bit. They gave her all the big lines, the revelations, and at Katara's expense, have I been saying Katara? Katara's expense, it felt like Katara was always the one saying, and then the Fire Nation attacked, you know?
Well, that whole entire monologue was taken exactly from the intro, which is said by Katara.
But now it's Gran Gran saying it. Yeah. And then it also took away Gran Gran's redemption, because at the very end of the 2-part premiere, she comes to them and she's like, well, it's prophesized that you are to help the Avatar or whatever.
Right.
She doesn't get that moment here. But let's transition over into the pros. Let's talk this thing up, because I know you liked it.
Yes, so I really liked the special effects. I thought that looked great. Like, I know that I said that Masters of Air could be shown in IMAX, but this could have, I felt like, been a show that was shown in IMAX, and you would have really gone the full scope of it. You had snowy sets, you had just like tracking shots that were amazing. I thought that Appa looked real. I was glad that the CGI was able to kind of keep up with the story that they were able to tell. I think that
the person who directed it also did the cinematography for it. That's how it's listed. Certain shots I think are worth complimenting, specifically Aang hugging Appa. Mm-hmm. When I saw that, I was like, that's a neat looking picture right there. Skies, when we saw the sky filled with Appas, it reminded me of the Avatar, the other movies where you had those what are they called? The Na'vi, and then the like giant.
Yeah, you're talking about
flying
the creatures,
fish or whatever. I don't know. And then whenever they filmed in Wolf Cove, that is the Southern Water Tribe, I believe, where they showed the ice and everything, and it was bright light outside.
I also said my favorite part was when he was in the ocean, but I think part of that is when he first is Avatar state, it fades to white, and it always was white at the beginning of every single Avatar thing, and then it transitioned into the first shot of the show. So when that happened, I was like, oh, that's such a cool reference, and it kind of gave you like okay, now we're starting the story.
I have so many iconic flagship moments and references that I think that you're going to like to hear, which I agree were really cool to see in the show. Another pro for me is that they, you said pronounce the names correctly, but they also cast this show really well. I know that they were trying to make it very authentic Asian legend and folklore. They wanted Albert Kim as the showrunner, and he was all about that. He was like, this is going to not only be the casting, but also the architecture, the design. We're going to have indigenous artists, the costuming, 20 musicians were hired, and also like a choir, Japanese instruments were used to get the music all right. And even at the ending credits, I think that was the opening credits song.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And also, things like Aang's character could have been written, and you could easily cast them horribly. Like, it could go horribly wrong. And I felt like, I didn't think that any of the acting was amazing, but I felt like the people that acted in it got the job done. Sokka, Katara, Aang, Zuko.
So you liked Aang the most as acting?
I think that, yeah, probably.
To me, I think Sokka embodies Sokka. His voice sounds exactly like Sokka to me from what I remember. And also his facial expressions. He may be a bit older. They got rid of some of the jokes that he was able to say in the show, but they switched them out with other ones. I think personally he was my favorite character again in this.
I think my favorite character is Uncle Iroh. I think that his character was a lot like how it was in the cartoon as well. He even has those T lines that I really like. And I think that really, when you look back at Avatar: The Last Airbender, he was a huge heart to that show, a huge character that they
Hold
needed.
that thought for a second, because I'm just going to say the ending. I really liked the ending too. It was a little schmaltzy, but I did feel emotion when they were like, "I will always be your friend" or whatever, and then he like busted out of his Avatar state, which he was stuck in, and Katara and Sokka were a little scared of that.
We got more Gyatso, and I was happy about it.
Yeah, well, he saw his skeleton. So let's talk about the flagship moments. They converted the anime intro. That was almost a direct conversion.
Okay, actually, I do have to talk about that. So I hated the movie, as you know, but I was sad because the movie does start out almost exactly like the intro with the red room and the water, fire, air. That was the only good part of that film, and I was actually a little disappointed that they didn't do it like they did in the film.
So you didn't like the intro as much as I did?
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. Manifestation of the Avatar state, when he starts glowing, it looked just like it did in the cartoon.
I agree.
The glowing statues and figurines that were in Zuko's ship, when that went off, that was just like how they glowed in the third episode of the animated series.
The Southern Air Temple.
Yes, when he's at the Southern Air Temple. The spear fishing, Sokka has the same spear. Boy in the iceberg, he looked exactly the same as the pilot. The pillar of light shooting into the air, just like Pikachu. Aang seeing Gyatso's skeleton, we said that one. Sokka's scream, you can't tell me that didn't sound like Sokka. It sounded exact when he was on
I think that's the best joke they had in the whole thing, because they cut it mid-sentence.
Yeah. Jasmine tea, when Iroh was offering the Jasmine tea. Zuko ignoring Iroh, that relationship seemed very similar. The backstories felt untouched, which I liked. 3 years ago is when Sokka and Katara's father Hakoda left, and I think Aang's motivation, and so is Zuko's, is close enough to what the cartoon had that it seems very same.
So I wanted to talk about that because, and I tried to skim past the first episode of the cartoon to see if it was this way, but when Katara is talking about her past, I do remember that in Sozin's comment, which again is the finale of the whole series.
And we see Sozin.
Do
you know who plays Sozin?
No.
Sozin was played by the same guy who we've seen everywhere. Hiro Kanagawa, Percy Jackson, So Help Me Todd, Pachinko, Upload, The Good Doctor. In Upload, he was the detective guy. The Good Doctor, Hellstrom, and The 100.
I never would have guessed that was him.
Yeah, he does have that white wig on and everything.
But when Katara is talking about her backstory, I know that in the finale they show part of it, and they showed part of the backstory only in small flashes when Katara is talking here. So I was wondering if we were jumping all the way to the end of the series and they were taking some of that stuff and putting it into the pilot. I think they might have been.
Yeah, I know they put itsy bitsy parts of like other seasons, but they mainly tried to stay with the Book of Water. Then we get to the same but different, and this is where it starts veering away from the stuff I liked to the stuff I wasn't so sure about to the stuff I really wasn't a fan of. There is some differences that I was okay with, but most of them I was like, why did we have to change this? So same but different. Sokka's courage. Now you remember in the animated series when the Fire Nation shows up, he runs out there and he just attacks the boat.
Yep.
And Zuko just pushes him aside. And if you remember, Zuko is so skilled at that point, even though he's still asking Iroh for like help with some of the more difficult maneuvers, but he is like the Ip Man when he's just cool as a cucumber, kind of the foiled to Aang where he doesn't even need to try to fight Sokka to beat him, to whip him off with his leg. In the show, though, he really has to try. Yeah. He's going at it full throttle with his fire ability, and it just seems like they've kind of nerfed his character a bit into just being an angry teen.
Zuko was my favorite character in the series, but he definitely was not in this live action.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. But maybe he has time to grow, just like he did in the... Aang didn't have as much time with Katara to really form that bond.
Right.
He certainly doesn't get that lovey-dovey eyeball thing that he has going.
And they didn't ride penguins. I was really hoping they were somehow show that scene, and they couldn't do it.
No snow penguins whatsoever. I was also sad about that. They got one bonding scene together where he kind of teaches her about the Force for like a few seconds, bending, whatever. But it's kind of boring because she doesn't even know how to make a ball of water at this point. So they've nerfed her character as well. So I feel like they did that with Zuko, and now they're doing it with her. And it's been so abbreviated that it kind of felt a little rushed, that she never felt like she wanted to leave the Water Tribe before Fire Nation showed up.
Right.
And before, she was like so enthralled by the Avatar and having fun for the first time in forever that she was ready to go with him when he gets banished. And he doesn't even get banished here. Once we get to the differences, we don't get any sled penguins. No lazy Appa. Remember, he doesn't want to fly in the cartoon. No Yip Yip. No wee booby right into it. No snot or pee humor. No war paint on Sokka when the Fire Nation shows up.
Right, because he had like blue and white on his face in the second episode.
People always bring it up when they talk about that show. I'm okay with Aang never getting banished because later on they have the storyline of that ultimatum that Zuko gives, and Sokka does come back, and I think that takes the place of it, of that drama of like, we should just give them Aang, and it takes Katara standing up for Aang to actually get him to go out there with his boomerang. The boomerang makes an appearance, but it's not the actual fighting. Like, it doesn't come back.
He doesn't really use it. Does he?
It doesn't. And Katara never uses it to break Aang out of this out of the ice. Aang just gets out of the ice, and then he doesn't wake up immediately. In the show, that's quite different. Bending not being allowed, and that the Fire Nation likes to kill benders. I think that's a little different because I remember Katara was the only water bender in the tribe, but I don't remember the Fire Nation wanting to kill her in the original. So I like that change because I think that it makes a lot of sense. If you have an authority power that's taking over a bunch of villages, they obviously don't want to have a bunch of people who are able to fight them back. Right?
Yeah.
Another thing that you might not know is remember how like there's a certain time of the year where the Fire Nation gets stronger. That's the day of the year. It's like with the comet going.
Right.
That they chose to attack the air temples.
I think that was Day of Black Sun, wasn't it? Or something like that?
Something like that happens later on. But what I'm saying is like the reason why we saw them so powerful and op in the first scene is because that's the same thing that happened.
Oh, okay.
They showed up on one of those days. There was one bad line that I really want to point out here, where the Avatar, he just got saved by Katara and Sokka, and he says, "No one's ever fought for me before."
We saw 20 minutes of basically them fighting for him.
Known. And I think it was supposed to be ironic in that way, like he'll learn soon enough, but it also felt like it was misplaced because I didn't like hearing that. It made me cringe. He also said he was scared of his power at one point, and I understand him being scared of the responsibility, but the Avatar I know from just the intro where he's like spinning around on that seems happy as a little fiddle. And it's like he does never seem scared with his abilities.
And I don't know how the show is going to be able to do things because one of my favorite episodes ever, actually two of them are in Avatar: The Last Airbender, and I mean of any show, and those would be Zuko Alone, season 2, episode 7, where Zuko goes to a new town and kind of helps.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. And Lake Lao Guy, and I won't go into that, but those shows were amazing, and they dealt with like the blue spirit. I don't know if this is going to be able to even hold a candlestick to things like that and be able to come across as emotional as the TV show did.
Well, the thing about the TV show is it did the balance, so it like set your expectations on, oh, this is such a lighthearted thing, that when it went deep, it really got you in the gut punch. Like it really made you feel, but when it's sad the whole time, like, you don't go 5 minutes in this series without something sad being brought up, without Gran popping up and saying, all your relatives are dead, you know? It just doesn't have the same hammer effect that I think that it could have had.
And it being an hour long is, even though I was entertained for most of it, that is too long for a series. And plus, it's 8 episodes, and if
I
you're
don't
going
want to affect your opinion too much, because you started off saying that you really like
this. I'm going to still give it a passing grade and still give it the grade that I was going to at the very start, and that would be a 6.5 out of 10, because I think that the show's potential, it's already 1,000 times better than the movie.
Yeah, the bar was set pretty low.
Yes.
The biggest head scratcher for me, it's my last real big complaint, is what was Sozin's plan back in the day, right? Because if he killed all the airbenders, and they already established that once you kill the Avatar, he's just reborn.
Right.
Then what good is that?
Well, it was the same way in the series, right?
I know. Maybe it's a question that they did answer in the series. But again, I wasn't the biggest fan, so I don't know. But I'm trying to understand it now. He killed all the airbenders there. Wouldn't that just transfer the Avatar to the next person? Like, he got super lucky that the Avatar accidentally, shelved himself for 100 years. Because if Aang hadn't, and he had died just then, there might have been 3 Avatars since now. Mm-hmm. This Fire Nation thing, it really was Aang's fault because he got himself stuck in that storm. Give your rating. You said it was a 6.5?
6.5 out of 10, yeah.
Do you want me to get mine?
I'm guessing it's going to be a 4.
No, it's not going to be a 4. It's gonna be a 5. There's just not enough childish wonder. The thing that made me not like the animated series, not dislike it, but just I don't want to watch the whole thing, but I ended up doing so anyways, was because there was so much sappy, funny humor. But at the same time, my favorite episode was, what was the tunnel? What's the stupid
Secret Tunnel?
Secret Tunnel, because of how stupid it was and how funny it was. So I'd rather have that than a sad, scared, weaker Aang. It feels like there was more exposition dumps in this episode. It was less fun. Sokka was great.
You really like Sokka?
I thought the guy did incredible. Zuko with his diary, that was kind of interesting.
You and Netflix secondary characters, because you felt the same way about Jet, and you said
Zuko is a main character. Sorry, Sokka is a main character.
Well, Jet's a main character too, or not Jet? Jet's his name.
Jet was my least favorite character of the animated.
Yes, but in the Netflix show, and then Jet also here. Okay, yeah. Anyways, keep going.
It runs 3 episodes, but it guts that last episode that felt a little unworthy, especially since they started it off with that genocide. Let me say it this way. So the original animated series, it was billed as an action, adventure, comedy, drama, fantasy. This is billed as an action, adventure, fantasy, drama.
Yeah.
That's how it is on Wikipedia. It's not me. They're straight up saying, we're not a comedy. Ironically, I think that the question could still be asked, does the spirit of the Avatar get passed on in this? And I might even say yes, it's a toughie. But I could say that for other people, it might be. For you, probably. It's just not my cup of jasmine tea.
I don't think that we need to see a Legend of Korra TV series.
Not yet.
I feel like they don't have to make that.
Yeah, regardless of any opinion that I'm giving, though, I think they should have automatically greenlit this show for 3 seasons. It was stupid that they didn't, and they should greenlight them now because you shoot it back to back to back. The benefit of knowing the full story going in, you don't get that too many times. They stopped filming this in June of 2022. The guy who plays Aang, Gordon Cormier, he's 14 years old now.
They got to get it in the can.
Is 18. Sokka and Zuko are in their 20s. You gotta go. They don't have time to wait for the reviews. I don't know what they're thinking. They should have been shooting this just back to back. I don't understand.
Wait, what are the reviews for it?
Okay. Oh, the reviews are 7.5 on IMDb, 59% on Rotten Tomatoes. Earlier today, it was a 60%. It literally, the tomato blew up. 56 on Metascore. Reviews range from across the board. Guardian and Decider both really liked it. Hollywood Reporter, New York Times really did not. What else do I want to say about it? Oh, comparison-wise, Dark Crystal is something that was able to preserve the childish wonder, but still have a dark story matter in the background. One Piece, I think, especially the One Piece ending. I know I said that I like the Avatar ending here, but they were able to end it kind of more similar, the One Piece one, like the original Avatar series ended it, where they were, where Aang and Sokka and Katara were off on Appa, and they were saying, we got to get to the Fire Nation, but first we're going to have all these adventures on the way. That's like what Monkey Luffy or whatever did when he was like, we've got our merry band of bandits and we're going to go for the pirate treasure, but first we're going to do a bunch of adventures on the way.
Comparing that, it's Lion Day. One Piece is way better than this show is.
I mean, their budgets are very similar. They were both on Netflix. $15 million for this every episode, $18 million for every episode of One Piece.
Let me clarify, the live action of One Piece is better than the live action of Avatar: The Last Airbender. But yeah.
Okay. I've got a bunch of little production notes. The most interesting one I'd say is Takeshi Furukawa, the composer of the thing, was originally from the Star Wars Clone Wars. And the reason that's interesting, besides the fact that the Avatar and Star Wars universes have always been compared to one another, in fact that the creators were always into that, was Dave Filoni was one of the original directors of the Avatar series, and then he went over and started working with George Lucas and actually did the Clone Wars.
That's cool. Yeah. I was wondering if they did a Cowboy Bebop thing where they got the original person who did the music for the anime to do the music for the live action, because the music was pretty good for this. Like, it definitely gave me like that nostalgic vibe whenever it was being played.
Yeah, I mean, this guy, he went to Japan and they did a bunch of stuff. I mean, I think when you look at visually and production-wise, you couldn't have improved upon that aspect of it. It was whether or not, and they also kept the story mostly the same. It's just how they're telling it that I'm and not as funny as I wanted it to be. That's my ending review. Pretty random. Last thought is that that would be a very painful tattoo to get as a kid, and I don't think it's a very smart one to get, because as you grow, it would move, and Aang would definitely have some problems where they would have to keep on correcting it as he got older.
Oh, yeah. No, you mean for the actual actor? I thought you just
No. I mean for like, because obviously the actor didn't get a real tattoo, but I'm saying in the show they said he's the youngest person that we've ever gotten a tattoo, and I would have been the master who was like, you know, guys, we don't have to tattoo everybody who shows that they're a master. Anyways, you can shave their head. I'm pretty sure everybody's going to respect them anyways. Yeah, the monks were cool until they died in the first scene. Anything else you want to say?
No, that's about it.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next episode. Sorry, this one's a long one. Bye.
Bye.